Science fiction is an amazing genre that lets you explore all manner of things, from the depths of the cosmos to the everyday world. Likewise, horror is an inspiring way to experience something you hopefully don't experience in your typical day. Put those two together and you've got a recipe for a good time. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with 10 underrated sci-fi horror shows you should be watching. Number 10. Blood Drive. There are times when you, as a horror fan, must defend the genre. Many brush it aside as a meaningless medium designed for exploitation and surface-level pleasure, but it can be so much more than that. Blood Drive, however, isn't the best example to use, as it's an utter balls-to-the-wall splatterfest, and that's what makes it so awesome. Based on a post-apocalyptic 1999, this series follows Arthur Bailey, a cop who is forced to take part in a death race where the cars run on human blood. I mean, if you can think of a show with a gnarlier description than that, then you're certainly up to date with your Shudder subscription. As you can probably guess, this series thrives on its deliciously pulpy qualities. Everything is pushed to the max with hyper-realised gore, melodrama and action. It's not a masterpiece of storytelling, but it will still surprise you with its well-built world, decent acting and over-the-top corporate conspiracies. Number 9. Counterpoint. Judging a TV show based on the leading actor can often be a recipe for disaster. There's very little way to assess the quality of a series purely on its casting choices. Still, despite this, you can often feel safe in the decisions of J.K. Simmons, and this show is a testament to that. Counterpoint is a compelling thriller that follows Howard Silk, a low-ranking bureaucrat working for the mysterious Office of Interchange. His life soon gets flipped upside down as he discovers the true purpose behind his work, that the OI is connected to a parallel universe. Wow, and you thought your 9 to 5 was stressful. This series manages to be subtle in its scares thanks to the corporate setting and the high concept. Still, it's an effortlessly tense experience with great writing, strong direction, and an utterly killer performance from Simmons. Number 8. Oat Studios. Oat Studios is a collection of experimental short films based around the idea of horror, post-apocalypses, and sci-fi. The stories in it range from reptilian invasions of Earth, to experiments in neural weaponry, to God himself playing with humanity. Think Love, Death and Robots, but far weirder. This collection of unconnected shorts is a full dive into the depths of Blomkamp's mind. The series legitimately feels like an unhinged exploration of sci-fi and horror in its purest form. Plenty of it is nonsensical and ludicrous, but the combining feature is that it's all unique and visually delightful, if rather macabre. Not every short will impress you, but the beauty of its episodic format is that you can move on to the next one right away and keep searching for something you love. With its position on Netflix and the star director, it's a surprise this one is so unheard of. Number 7. From is a terrifying series that takes place in a small town beset by nocturnal monsters. None of the residents can escape this awful fate, and anyone who stumbles into the town suffers the same misfortune. Every night is a fight for survival, with the only hope being the town's sheriff, Boyd Stevens. This show is utterly haunting. The creatures themselves have a wolf in sheep's clothing vibe thanks to their human visages, which only makes them scarier. Plus, the slow build, solid sound design and great acting turn it into something you don't want to miss. Number 6. Swamp Thing. DC's TV universe is full of hits and misses. For every Peacemaker, you've got a Batwoman. For every Doom Patrol, there's a Why the Last Man. But of all the engaging / unwatchable shows from this comic book company, Swamp Thing is certainly one that deserves a lot more attention. Based on the comics of the same name, this series shows Abby Arcane returning to her hometown to investigate a mysterious virus related to the swamp. However, things soon take a drastic turn as she discovers the titular monster and realizes there might be more to him than meets the eye. Part of Swamp Thing's appeal, and what helps it stand out in the DC lineup, is the focus on horror. It's a creepy series with some fantastic visual effects and a dark / dingy atmosphere that makes it genuinely unsettling. Plus, there's a surprisingly poignant human story at its centre. Sadly, the show was tragically struck with cancellation by Warner Brothers due to budgetary reasons. And it's a real shame, as there was a lot of potential in this series, and the open-ended finale left viewers feeling teased. Number 5. Sweet Home. This is an apocalyptic series that takes place in a world where humans are turning into horrifying monsters. It follows a group of survivors inside an apartment complex who attempt to survive the terrifying ordeal. But these creatures are more than simple beasties, as they're also manifestations of their former human selves and desires. As you would expect, a massive part of the show's appeal comes from the monsters. The use of irony as a basis for their designs and mannerisms gives the show a positively metaphorical vibe, adding depth to the world and the characters. However, this isn't just some silent, Hill-esque piece of symbolism, as the show also thrives thanks to the incredible action and the claustrophobic setting. It manages to be adrenaline pumping and unnerving at the same time, giving you the best of both worlds. Number 4. Legion. Based on the Marvel Comics, this series depicts the events after the titular character, Legion, unleashes his true powers. Having spent his entire life believing he was merely schizophrenic, he finds out that he's a mutant, a discovery that changes his life forever. While this show isn't as horror-centric as the others on this list, it certainly fills you with the creeps thanks to its erratic nature. David Haller's position as an unreliable narrator makes the story feel disjointed and bizarre. This turns the show into an exercise in mind-boggling visual storytelling. For a project from Marvel and FX, it's shocking that this show doesn't have more recognition. While it's true that the character is by no means mainstream, you'd still think that the attached stars, Dan Stevens, Aubrey Plaza, Jermaine Clement, and more, combined with the source material, would have garnered it a more significant following. Number 3. Catler. Catler is an Icelandic sci-fi mystery based in the town of Vik. The show takes place 1 year after a catastrophic eruption from the Catler volcano and shows the humble town being dragged into chaos by the re-emergence of deceased figures from years prior. As if the creepy setup wasn't enough, there also seems to be a looming cosmic threat overhead. This show has a very reserved and nuanced approach to horror. It doesn't strike you with big shocks or disturbing imagery. Instead, it establishes a slow burn, letting the horror of the scenario and the characters' emotional turmoil lure you in and delivering some very cathartic terror. The Icelandic setting also establishes a real sense of charm. The volcanic surroundings and focus on ash give it a naturally muted colour palette, giving the show an uncanny and unnatural aesthetic. Number 2. The Strain. Coming from the mind of Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan, this series depicts the events of a mysterious viral infection that plagues New York. But this outbreak is far from your average cold, or another virus that shall go unnamed, as it turns its victims into creatures reminiscent of vampires. The show masterfully blends the concept of disease and vampires in a way that makes it unique. It still appeals to the ghoulish depiction of the classic monsters, but presents them with a morbid reality that makes them all the more believable. There's also a focus on visceral body horror that makes it a tough watch if you've got a weak stomach. Combine that with some great action and stellar practical effects, and you've got all the makings of something that should have been a classic, but fell surprisingly under the radar. Number 1. Alice in Borderland. Alice in Borderland is the Batman to Squid Game Superman. This Japanese series, based on the manga of the same name, follows a young man and his friends as they are suddenly transported to a mysterious dystopian future. There, they are forced to play life-threatening games in order to keep living. The tone of this series is painfully bleak, as the dark imagery and high sci-fi tone make it feel like a nightmare. But it also manages to be pulse-pounding with kick-ass action and masterful control of tension. What helps Alice in Borderland thrive as well is the storytelling. It's full of compelling characters with tragic backstories and manages to keep the plot moving forward in a way that will leave you hooked. The overwhelming mystery of who is behind everything is left like a tantalizing carrot on a stick, giving you plenty of reason to just keep watching. And that's our list. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.